As we heard earlier from the Reserve Bank Governor, the MPC has decided to keep interest rates unchanged for now. Those with debt and mortgages have breathed a sigh of relief, but the Governor did warn that interest rates won't necessarily stay at these levels for an extended time. And in fact, we're likely to see a hike going into the future. Frank Blackmore is lead economist at KPMG. Frank, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. So firstly, let's talk about this sigh of relief for consumers. Is it really?
Well, obviously we know prices are still increasing, but they're increasing at a slower rate. So in a way, that's a bit of a relief, but it's not a real relief. Things are still getting more expensive, but at a slower pace.
When you look at the factors outlined by the Reserve Bank Governor for why they've decided to keep interest rates unchanged, what are some of the risk factors that you see there?
Yes, so well, that's two questions. So
sure.
the main sort of drivers of the inflation that we got ourselves in are fuel, food, and electricity prices, right? So the Reserve Bank, what has happened is they've revised down their forecasts for a number of these items. In fact, fuel will be disinflationary. They see it in 2023 coming, affecting inflation by minus 3.1%. Electricity remained the same at 11.3%. Obviously, that's an administered price, and it doesn't give them much leeway to change their forecast there. And food has been revised slightly down to 10.3%, which, albeit elevated still, is a lot better than the previous meeting, and that allowed them to keep the rates on hold. And as far as the risks are concerned, we know there's a lot of uncertainty still in the economy, not only the South African economy, but globally. But the local factors that impact us are export prices have decreased, specifically of the commodities we export. Things like coal was a big earner last year, less this year, obviously, on those lower prices. That'll result in potential current account deficit. That's not great for us. The El Nino phenomenon that we expect to impact agriculture and the yields that we may get this year. Then obviously lower revenue hauls and greater than inflationary increases in wages in some sectors of the economy. That all keeps inflation higher for longer.
The warning from the Governor about what the future of interest rates look like in terms of the hiking cycle not being completely done, what should we do with that as consumers?
Well, I think he's keeping an option open in that respect. Remember, the Governor only has really one tool at his disposal, and that is interest rates. But in a way, he has an indirect second tool, which is threatening to increase interest rates. And he wants to leave that open because obviously the future is uncertain. We know this month electricity went up by 18.6%. We don't know when that inflation in the future will come through the economy, and potentially there's also room for oil price shocks or other shocks to hit the economy. So although I don't think it's likely that we'll see more increases in interest rates, as long as we see a decrease in inflation as we saw last month, he's keeping that window open.
Frank, consumers right now are really pressed on every side. Let's talk about what we should be anticipating going into the second half of the year, especially given where the state of the economy just more holistically is?
Well, from an inflationary perspective, I think it's good news. Inflation peaked last year in July, and you know, if one measures inflation, this year's figure, we have to compare it to what the figure was last year. So even if there was inflation in the system, we expect a further decrease in inflation in July, potentially below the 5% mark. And that'll allow the Governor, towards the end of the year, potentially to lower interest rates. And obviously that will bring relief to consumers.
All right, let's leave it there for today. Frank Blackmore, lead economist, KPMG.